It was supposed to be quiet, just me, my son, a weekend with no one else's name on the walls or voices in the hallway. No birthdays I wasn't invited to, no jokes that weren't meant to sting but somehow always did. Just me, finally, and the home I bought with my own damn hands. The drive up to Lake Arrowhead was almost perfect, the kind of road where the trees lean just enough to frame the sky like a painting. Jonas sat next to me, earbuds in, tapping something out on his phone. He didn't talk much, but when he glanced over and caught me smiling, he smiled back. That was enough. This cabin, my villa, wasn't big. It didn't have to be. It had my touch on every corner, from the flooring I chose to the curtain rods I installed with bloodied knuckles and a YouTube tutorial playing on repeat. I pulled into the gravel driveway. My hands froze on the wheel. There were cars, 4, no, 5, lined up neatly like this was someone's party. A Range Rover I didn't recognize. My sister Barbara's Lexus, my parents' old Buick. Jonas sat up. Are we having guests? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My chest was tight, like someone had pulled a rubber band around my lungs and just kept twisting. The door was unlocked. Inside, it wasn't mine anymore. Someone had replaced the quiet I built with the buzz of a party. Laughter too loud for the room, clinking glasses, music blasting from speakers I'd left in a storage box weeks ago. The scent of cinnamon rolls and too much perfume smacked me in the face. People I didn't know, were sipping mimosas, wearing shoes on the rug I had custom woven, holding drinks over the table I spent hours refinishing. My mother turned from a group of guests and saw me. She didn't look shocked, just annoyed. Tanya, there you are. Don't just stand there. Come help with the dessert table. Barbara's been running around all morning. Barbara, my sister, always the golden one. She waved with a champagne glass in her hand and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Just in time to help me set up the cupcakes. I said nothing. I couldn't say anything. The host, Tessa, a family friend who once called me emotionally distant in a Christmas card, stood by the sliding doors, microphone in hand, thanking everyone for attending. Let's hear it for our amazing hosts, Mr. and Mrs. Taylor, and their brilliant daughter, Emily. That wasn't my name. I stood there, surrounded by people clapping for someone else's dream, in the very house I worked my fingers raw to buy. It was like someone had slipped me out of my own skin and replaced it with something ornamental, nice to look at, but hollow inside. The music jolted me back, some pop remix blasting at a volume that made the walls vibrate. It wasn't the playlist I'd built for this space. That one had been soft jazz and old acoustic guitar, the kind of music you breathe through. This was the kind that drowns you. I walked to the corner where the Bluetooth console sat. The playlist had been changed. Mine was deleted, just gone. No one saw me pick up the remote, or maybe they did, but didn't care. That was the theme today. In the dining room, someone spilled sangria on the tablecloth. Not just any cloth, my cloth. White linen, embroidered with a subtle leaf pattern, one I stitched during my first year working full-time. It had made every move with me since. It's not like this cloth is valuable, someone said, laughing. I didn't catch who. I tried to speak. My mother stepped between me and the spill. Let's not start drama, Tanya. It's just a party. Just a party. Jonas sat in the corner, his plate untouched. He looked up at me, his eyes too aware for his age. He didn't say anything, but he saw everything. That was the worst part. I walked to the kitchen. Every cabinet had been opened. The wine glasses I'd kept boxed for a special moment were sitting on the counter, smeared with lipstick. The mugs I'd collected from small-town trips were being used like hotel freebies. I opened a drawer to breathe, to reset. That's when I saw the napkins. Emily's Villa brunch stitched into each corner. Not Tanya, not my name. My jaw tightened. Jonas walked in quietly. His hand found mine. He didn't grip it, just placed his fingers inside mine like a small echo of the way things used to be when he was younger. I won't lose my voice this time, I whispered to myself. He looked up. I met his eyes. We stood there for a moment, mother and son, the actual owners of this silence. We'll watch, I said. Just for now. I wasn't looking for proof. I wasn't even looking for a reason to be angry. But there it was, stacked neatly like it belonged, like it had always been there. A pile of invitation cards on the hallway console, glossy, thick cardstock. Someone had spent money on this. I picked one up. My fingers trembled, but not from nerves, more from that sensation you get when something awful confirms itself before you even finish reading it. Hosted by Mr. and Mrs. Taylor and their daughter Emily. Emily. That wasn't even her real name. Barbara had started using Emily when she launched her online brand. Said it tested better, sounded more curated. I never corrected anyone. What for? I flipped the card over. Looked again. My name wasn't there. Not even in small print. And I was the one who bought the house, paid the taxes, cleaned out the gutters 2 weekends ago. It didn't hurt. Not exactly. It felt more like the kind of pain that sits at the edge of your chest. Just wait. Not sharp. Just there. My mother walked by with a tray of tiny tartlets and saw me holding the invitation. Oh, that! It's just an oversight. You know Barbara handled all the printing, she said, like I was fussing over punctuation on a grocery list. I nodded, said nothing, just tucked that moment away in the mental folder I'd been building since I walked through the front door. Later, I passed the living room and noticed the wall. You know how sometimes you don't see what's missing until you stop? That's what happened. I froze. Stared. The family photo, the one I'd taken last Thanksgiving using my tripod and remote, was gone. In its place was a blown-up canvas of Barbara's wedding portrait, 5 years old, sun-bleached smile. Her ex-husband, who cheated on her 3 months after, still smiling like a man with a conscience. I walked toward the guest bedroom. Something told me to check. And sure enough, leaned against the corner like a forgotten broom was the missing Thanksgiving photo. Frame cracked, dust settling along the top like no one had even tried to move it carefully. I bent down, picked it up, brushed the dust with the sleeve of my jacket. My hand traced the glass. It wasn't just about forgetting me. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was replacement, a deliberate edit. You don't forget who took the picture, I whispered. You just choose to replace the moment. I re-entered the living room. Barbara was laughing, too loudly, too brightly, with a group of women I didn't recognize. One of them was sipping wine and admiring the kitchen. Emily, this is stunning, the woman said. Did you design this space? Barbara didn't skip a beat. I had some help, of course, she smiled. Family always comes together when it counts. My stomach clenched. Not from surprise. This was textbook Barbara. I almost opened my mouth. Then I felt Jonas's fingers squeeze my hand. He'd appeared beside me so quietly, I hadn't even noticed. His grip wasn't tight, just firm. A silent ask. Don't. Not now. And I didn't. Cheryl floated by moments later, eyes skimming past me like I was a column or a plant. Try not to ruin this, she said under her breath. You've always been so sensitive about credit. This is just for fun. I didn't reply. My eyes burned, but no tears came. Not out of strength, just tiredness. There's a difference. I walked to the back patio. No one followed. The party noise felt distant out there. I sat in a chair by the deck, staring out at the lake. The same lake I stared at when I first signed the deed. When I imagined mornings with coffee and silence, not crowds and stolen names. I thought about every overtime shift, every delayed purchase, every decision that led me here. Me, doing everything right, quietly, without applause. And still, they couldn't let me have this. I let my shoulders drop, not in defeat, but in acceptance. They didn't remove me from the story. They never wrote me in to begin with. As the sun started dipping lower, casting that golden ripple across the lake, Jonas came and sat beside me. He didn't speak, just leaned in. They think they own everything, I said, because they've never had to earn anything. He didn't respond. He just stayed. And in that stillness, I began to plan. I stayed out on the deck longer than I should have. The party behind me didn't fade, just blurred, like someone turned the focus knob the wrong way on a camera. Laughter rose and fell like waves I wanted no part of. My body felt disconnected from it all, like it was rejecting the noise, the smells, the air. There was rosemary in the breeze, and spilled Prosecco. The scent hit hard, sweet, and sour at the same time. I remember thinking how strange it was, how fast someone could turn your safe space into their playground. Then I heard him. Jonas. His steps were soft, hesitant. His eyes didn't meet mine right away. He had a glass of orange juice in his hand. He glanced at it, then up at me. "Don't drink the one they poured for you," he whispered. That one sentence shifted everything. My spine straightened, but I didn't let my face show it. I knelt to his level, kept my voice low. "Why not?" He leaned in, nervous now. "I saw Aunt Barbara put something in it." Then she laughed with Nana. They all laughed. I didn't ask more. I didn't want to scare him or confirm something I wasn't ready to face. I just nodded, took the glass from his hand and held it like it was nothing. Inside, I was boiling. I'd been called paranoid before, told I was reading too much into things, sensitive, overthinking. This was how they conditioned me to stay quiet, make me doubt myself just enough. But my son, he saw it too, and he said something. That meant more than anything. I kissed his forehead and told him to go sit by the kitchen island and wait for me. I walked back inside with the untouched glass in my hand. Barbara spotted me and made a beeline through the crowd, arms wide, voice too high. "There she is," she sang. "Come on, don't be awkward, sis. We all just want you to feel included." Her hug wrapped around me like a net. Fake warmth, overperformed affection, eyes all over us. I hugged back with the stiffness of steel. And then I whispered, just loud enough for her to hear. "I already feel more included than I should." She flinched slightly, just enough for me to notice. Then she grinned again for the crowd. I didn't stop walking until I reached the long table in the center of the room. Guests were mid-bite, mid-toast. The music hummed under the chatter. I stood behind Barbara's seat and raised the glass just enough for her to see. "You picked this for me, right?" I said, calm. "You should have the first sip." She paused, blinked, glanced around. All eyes were on us now. She chuckled. "Tanya, really?" "I insist," I said, voice steady. People were watching. Social pressure did the work. She smiled, took the glass, and drank. Not all of it. Just enough. I sat across from her without saying another word. Time didn't stop, but it slowed in my head. I wasn't watching her to see if something would happen. I was watching everyone else, seeing if anyone else had caught what just happened. As Cheryl looked at me from across the room, her expression unreadable, not alarmed, just calculating. Jonas sat quietly at the far corner, like a chess piece no one noticed until it was too late. No chaos followed. Barbara didn't collapse. No shouting, no accusations. The world moved on, but something had shifted. I felt it. I'd said no without raising my voice. Drew a line without needing to explain it. Barbara didn't mention the glass again. She pivoted back to small talk, laughter, charming the guests. But her eyes flicked toward me now and then, differently. Not annoyed, not mocking, cautious. That was new. I wasn't powerful yet, but I wasn't invisible either. That was a start. I sat next to Jonas out on the deck again. He leaned into my side, head on my shoulder. The lake reflected the late-day sky in broken pieces. "This isn't revenge," I said softly. "This is reminder. I'm still here." He didn't say anything, just stayed close. I looked toward the back windows, where the lights inside glowed and voices carried, and I made myself a promise. "Next time," I said, "we won't just survive the party. We'll change the room." Barbara was back at the center of it all, smiling, sipping, soaking in the attention like it was oxygen. The patio had cooled off, but the heat under my skin didn't go anywhere. I stood a few feet away, glass still in hand. The same glass Jonas had warned me about. It sat in my palm like a dare. I looked at it, at her, and then at the long table she'd made her stage. I walked toward her. My pace wasn't rushed. Nobody noticed until I was close enough to place the glass in front of her plate, like a waiter delivering something special. "You picked this for me, right?" I said, calm as the lake behind us. You should enjoy it first. She blinked, only once, but I caught it. She looked at the glass, then at me, then at the guests, who'd gone quiet without realizing it. The way rooms do when they sense tension before their brains catch up. Her hand moved slowly, almost hesitating, but the smile stayed painted on her lips. She lifted the glass. One sip. Just enough to make her commit. She set it down and chuckled. Well, that's refreshing. I stepped back. Not a word more, not a raised voice, not a plate shattered, but I felt something in the room shift, a ripple behind the eyes of people watching. One of the guests gave me a glance, not judgmental, not even curious, just noting. Cheryl caught my eye. She didn't flinch, didn't smile, just held the stare. Like she knew something had started and wasn't sure how far it would go. Dinner rolled on like nothing happened. I took my seat next to Jonas. The table buzzed again. Forks clinked. Laughter rose back up like someone turned the dial. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Barbara answered a guest's question about the villa, saying with a casual smile, "We're working on making it our weekend place. It's got good bones." I chewed slowly. My hand stayed under the table so no one saw the grip I had on the napkin, cloth, embroidered, just like the ones at my own mother's wedding 20 years ago. Jonas was quiet, picking at the corner of his bread roll. Then Avery, the youngest of the cousins, toddled over with a frosting-stained cupcake in one hand. She tugged my sleeve. I turned. "Aunt Emily said you only paid for the boring stuff," she said. "She made it all pretty." My chest didn't tighten. It hardened. I looked down at her and smiled gently. "Well, pretty things fade, but boring things hold it all together." She nodded like she understood, then skipped off. Jonas looked at me and for the first time that evening, smiled. I didn't raise hell that night. Not yet. Instead, I went table to table, asking questions that sounded casual on the surface. "How do you know Barbara? She mention where she lives now? First time at the villa?" Most of them smiled politely. Some were vague. A few shared way too much, enough for me to start confirming what I already suspected. Barbara had passed this place off as hers. Tessa walked over, mid-toast refill. Her tone was syrupy sweet. "Emily told us you were just staying here temporarily," she said, "that it's part of some family project. So creative." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that what she said?" I didn't wait for her to answer. Jonas was near the dessert table, eyeing the frosting with the skepticism of a kid who's learned not everything handed to him is safe. I leaned down and whispered, "Remember that story I used to tell you? About wolves in sheep's clothing?" He nodded. "We're standing in a flock right now." By the time the plates were cleared and the patio lights dimmed, Cheryl found me standing alone near the side gate, watching the silhouettes of people heading to their cars. She stood beside me, quiet at first. "Please don't ruin this," she finally said. "Your sister's finally coming into her own." I didn't look at her. "At what cost, Mom?" Silence. I turned slightly. "Do you ever think maybe I've been in my own this whole time? You just weren't looking." She sighed, put a hand on my shoulder. Not with comfort, just routine. "Sometimes the strong ones need to sacrifice the spotlight." "Sometimes," I said, "the strong ones get tired." She left me there with nothing but the rustling leaves and the hum of her own justification. By the time the lights dimmed, I had already pulled back. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally. I stood near the edge of the patio with Jonas at my side, both of us barely visible in the shadows beyond the string lights. The guests were buzzing, glasses half full, laughter warming up again after dinner. I watched it all like someone watching a play from backstage. It looked like joy, but it wasn't mine. Tessa stood by the mic. Her voice always carried too much syrup, too much performance. "And now," she said, beaming, "a toast to the woman who brought this dream to life, the woman who gave this space its soul. Emily." The name hit harder than I thought it would. Applause followed, loud, automatic, enthusiastic. Like this was all true. Like everyone clapping actually believed it. I didn't move, didn't blink, I just stared at the glass in Jonas's hand, at the way the condensation slid down his fingers. "They really don't see you, do they?" he asked, his voice quiet but sharp. I didn't answer. How do you answer that when it's the truth? They never saw me. Only what they could use. The villa, the floors I hand-sanded, the beams I painted alone, the roof I paid to patch, belonged to someone else now, at least in their eyes. And then came the cake. A silver tray rolled out, carried by a young server who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. On top was a 3-tiered, buttercream-covered insult. "Congratulations, Emily!" That was what the top layer said. Not Emily and Tanya. Not our family's new beginning. Just Emily. Cheryl clapped like a proud pageant mom. "She's earned it, finally," she said to no one in particular, but loud enough for me to hear. Earned what? My silence? Barbara stepped forward with grace, accepted the knife like she was cutting into legacy itself. Cameras flashed. A few of the older guests dabbed at their eyes like this moment meant something. Then I turned away, walked toward the fire pit. I needed to stare at something burning. The sound behind me faded into a low hum, like tinnitus you just learned to live with. Jonas followed, as he always did. I didn't look at him when he asked, "Why didn't you say anything?" I answered with the truth. Because I've been trained not to. Because when I do, they call it drama. He didn't argue. He just sat next to me, his silence thicker than the smoke curling from the firewood. It didn't end there. Barbara found me later, holding a slice of cake like a peace offering, though nothing about her posture said peace. "Take a bite, sis," she said, too chipper, too sweet. "You're part of this too." I stared at the cake. "You keep giving me things that weren't meant for me," I said, "and taking what was." She laughed, then leaned in slightly. "You always make everything about you. This is why nothing works with you around." I felt the snap, not loud, not messy, just clean, final. Cheryl appeared like a bad reflex. "Don't ruin this, Tanya. This is her moment." My voice was louder than I expected when it came out. I didn't plan it. It just happened. Every time I breathe, you think it's a threat to her. Why is my presence so offensive to your plans? The table went quiet. A few people looked away. One couple awkwardly stood and pretended to need a bathroom break. I walked away before I could say more. I knew where the line was, and I'd finally stepped over it. Inside the villa, I slammed the sliding door shut behind me, not for theatrics, just because I needed a sound that matched how I felt. I paced the living room, shoes digging into the rug I'd chosen myself last fall. My breath came in sharp bursts, my hands unsteady. I pulled open my laptop, clicked through files, scanned until I saw what I needed. There it was. My name. Tanya Jackson. On every page of the deed, the permits, the contractor agreements. I whispered to the screen, "Then why do I feel like I don't own anything?" Footsteps behind me. Jonas. He held a slice of cake, the same slice Barbara had offered me earlier, now untouched. He placed it gently on the table, sat down across from me. "You don't have to eat what they serve," he said. I stared at him, and then I laughed. It broke through me like a crack in concrete. He smiled, just a little. I wiped at my eyes. I looked at the cake, then back at him. "No," I said. "I'm done swallowing what doesn't feed me." By the time the last car engine faded down the gravel drive, the villa was quieter than it had been in days. Not peaceful, just empty. I stood alone in the living room, surrounded by the leftovers of a celebration I hadn't asked for and hadn't been part of. I walked through the room slowly, one by one. My throw pillows had been replaced with bright-colored ones I didn't buy. The ceramic lamp I picked up at a flea market was missing from the reading nook. My favorite mug, the one Jonas painted for me when he was 7, was gone. The dining table had been shifted. The rug rolled up halfway, like someone tried to stage a different kind of life here. A box sat in the corner. It read, "Villa Props, Emily's Launch Party." Emily. That name again. I opened the box. Fake books, decor with prefab quotes like "Live, Laugh, Love" in gold foil. Cheap branding dressed up like authenticity. I needed something real. I walked to the drawer where I kept the folder. My folder. Deed, insurance, renovation contracts. I reached in and found nothing. The folder was gone. I checked every drawer, then my bedroom, then the office. Nothing. At first, I thought maybe it had just been moved. Maybe Cheryl had tidied things and forgot to tell me. But the more I looked, the more my chest tightened. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a party. This was a takeover. I stood there, alone in my own house, and realized how deep it all had gone. Back in the dining room, a stack of napkins had been left behind. White linen, monogrammed. I picked one up. Emily's Estate, Autumn Launch. Not a detail, not a cute label, a declaration. My thumb ran over the stitched letters. I felt them like a bruise under my skin. Beneath one of the silver trays, I found a catering invoice, billed to the Anderson family. Anderson, Barbara's ex-husband's last name. She wasn't even using her own anymore. I held the napkin in one hand and the invoice in the other. My stomach turned, not from betrayal, I'd had my fill of that, but from the sheer audacity of it all. I remembered the crest I designed for the villa. Last year, during a quiet winter weekend, I'd stayed up hand-drawing a monogram that meant something. My initials, a date, a small oak tree, for strength. That crest wasn't anywhere in sight now. I went to the office. My backup files had to be there. I opened the laptop. Old, slow, but familiar. I searched the property documents folder. The PDF was there, except the signature page was missing. I pulled up my email, found the original file, the one I'd sent to the title company. There it was, full, untouched. Then something else caught my eye. A folder in the shared drive. Joint Family Property Proposal. I clicked it. Inside was a legal draft, a PDF labeled Preliminary Co-Trust Agreement. It listed Barbara and Cheryl as co-trustees of the villa, citing family consolidation efforts and shared interest realignment. No one had said a word to me. No discussion, no invitation to review, just paperwork drawn up behind my back, reshaping everything I'd built into something they could call theirs. I stared at the screen, jaw clenched. Then I called Eric. He answered on the second ring. I didn't say hello. They started, I said. He went quiet, then, send me everything, now. I did, and then I waited. Not long after, Cheryl came back inside with a tray of leftover cupcakes. She placed them on the kitchen counter like none of this had changed. I walked up to her. Where is my deed? She didn't flinch. I secured it. We didn't want anything getting misplaced with all the foot traffic. Who's we? I asked. And who gave you permission? You've always shared with your sister, she said. This isn't new. No, I said, stepping in. It's very different. I worked for this. She staged it. Cheryl's eyes narrowed. Family isn't about ownership, Tanya. It's about sacrifice. I stared at her, long and hard. Then it's time someone else made a sacrifice for once. I didn't wait for her reply. I turned and walked away, phone already in hand, calling Eric again. Morning started with the kind of quiet you only get after a storm, the kind where things settle just enough for you to see what broke. I made breakfast like I always did, out of habit more than hunger. Toast for Jonas, coffee for me. The air was still thick, like the villa hadn't decided whether it wanted to exhale yet. Jonas walked into the kitchen, no smile, shoulders tight. She pinched me, he said. I set the mug down. What? Barbara. She said it was a joke, but it wasn't funny. The anger didn't hit like fire. It hit cold. Controlled. Where is she? He pointed to the back deck. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked out. Cheryl was out there too, standing beside Barbara, and two guests still hanging around like they hadn't noticed the tone had changed. I didn't shout, didn't accuse. If you ever lay a hand on my child again, I said, even in jest, you'll see a side of me this family has ignored too long. Barbara blinked, then smirked, smug as always. Oh, come on, it was a joke. You're always so cold. Cheryl chimed in, because she always did. That's what people say, Tanya. You're distant, hard. I smiled. Not the kind that forgives, the kind that holds a mirror. Cold is what people call women who finally stopped entertaining nonsense. Neither of them replied. I went back inside. Later, from the hallway near the kitchen, I heard voices again. I paused. The walls in this house, thin. She always did act like she was better than everyone else, one woman said. That icy tone, another added. She never fits in, even with her own blood. I walked into the room. I didn't yell. I didn't break anything. I just set down a tray of clean cups hard enough to catch their attention. Funny, I said. I always thought warmth came from action, not performance. Tessa, ever the peacekeeper, offered a weak smile. You know, Tanya, you're respected. Just misunderstood. Respected in silence, I said. Misunderstood on purpose. Story of my life. I turned and left. Jonas and I took a walk around the lake that afternoon. The sky was soft, gray, quiet again. He didn't talk much, I did. I kept quiet because I thought that's how you survive, I said. That if I just swallowed everything long enough, eventually they'd see me. He kicked a rock into the water. So now what? He asked. We leave? I shook my head. No. They do. This house has my name on it. This life is mine. I'm not walking away from it. We got back to find Barbara and Cheryl boxing up decorations, still pretending the world hadn't shifted under their feet. I didn't speak to them. I walked straight to the front door, pulled out the keys, and changed the lock cylinder. Took me less than 3 minutes. Simple, mechanical, final. Barbara finally looked up. Is that really necessary? So is breathing, I said. But people tend to stop noticing until it's gone. That evening, I called a meeting on the patio. Cheryl, Barbara, Tessa. Just the 3 of them, seated on the iron chairs I had paid for. I stood. This won't take long, I began. I am not the problem you keep rehearsing around each other. I am the truth you've tried to erase. I handed each of them a sealed envelope, legal, crisp. Inside, a cease and desist drafted by Eric. It outlined every boundary. No further use of my property, name, or designs in Barbara's branding. No access to the house without written permission. No more Emily events. Cheryl opened hers, mouth already forming protest. There's no defense for betrayal, I said. Only consequences. I turned, walked back into the villa, and this time, I shut the glass door behind me like it mattered. The morning arrived soft, but it didn't feel like peace. It felt like the kind of calm that comes right before a bone breaks. I stepped out onto the patio just as guests began to trickle back in, heels clicking against the tile, voices cheerful, unaware. Another celebration was starting, this one with banners, balloons, and a new lie dressed up like a legacy. Emily's estate, lifestyle launch, read the sign by the entrance. Below it, a large printed board stood tall with Barbara, Emily, front and center, arms crossed like she'd conquered something. Behind her, a photo of the villa I built with my own sweat and savings. I scanned the setup. There, next to the drinks table, were design boards, my drawings, my layout, my color schemes, labeled as Emily's vision board. Cheryl moved through the crowd, handing out champagne like communion, like she hadn't lied to me 2 days ago with a smile on her face. A man in a checkered blazer approached. I'd never seen him before. You must be proud of your sister, he said, holding a glass and gesturing to the display. She's really done something big here. I didn't flinch. She didn't build this stage, I said. She just learned how to stand on it. He blinked, smiled like he didn't know what I meant. He didn't. Most of them didn't. Barbara took the mic next. Her voice oozed charm and performative humility. This journey has been one of resilience, she said, of turning ashes into beauty, of reclaiming space that once felt unreachable. The crowd clapped, nodding along like this was a TED Talk. I stood still, folder pressed against my side. Then she said it. And today, we welcome you to the Anderson estate, our new chapter. I walked up beside her. Calm, precise. She glanced at me, smile faltering just enough. I took the mic. Before you all toast, I said, there's something you might want to see. I opened the folder. Inside were the original blueprint contracts, contractor agreements, and all the design documents, each with my name, signed, stamped, dated. Gasps rippled like wind through dry leaves. I know many of you were told this was a family project, I continued, that Emily or Barbara or whoever she is today created this. But every inch of this house, every board, every design was mine. On cue, Jonas from the back of the crowd clicked the USB into the display screen. Images flipped one by one, my emails, sketches, final blueprints, then side-by-side comparisons showing Barbara's copied versions. A man in the back said what most were thinking. Wait, this was yours? I nodded. Yes, every nail, every tile, every name they stripped off this house so they could slap someone else's on. Barbara laughed, tight and forced. This was a collaboration. Everyone knew. I didn't let her finish. A collaboration where I wasn't invited to my own housewarming? That shut her up. Cheryl stepped forward, voice shaking. Let's all take a moment and... I set the mic down on the table and walked away. Later, I sat at the edge of the dock with Jonas. We had kicked our shoes off. The lake didn't care what name was on the mailbox. It shimmered the same. He was quiet for a while before asking, "Do you think they'll come back?" "They'll try," I said. "But the locks are changed." I reached into my bag and pulled out the white cloth napkin, the one from that first day, the one that once had wine stains and other people's fingerprints all over it. I had cleaned it, folded it, I laid it next to me on the dock. "You don't need to shout to burn down a lie," I said. "Sometimes you just hold up the truth." The villa was quiet again, not silent in the way it had been 2 days ago, full of tension and pretending, but quiet like a room finally exhaled, a space without pretense. I walked through it with a trash bag in one hand and a cloth in the other, not rushing, just finishing. Empty glasses lined the counters. Wrinkled napkins lay under chairs. Balloons deflated in corners like they knew the show was over. On the floor, by the hallway arch, I found a card. Folded. Cheap print. "Thank you for letting Emily share her story." I read it once, just once, then dropped it into the trash without thinking twice. In the kitchen, I re-wiped dishes that were already clean, not because they were dirty, but because they'd been handled by people who didn't belong. It was a reclaiming, not a chore. I looked around and whispered, not to Jonas, not to the room, but to myself. It's mine again. My phone buzzed on the counter. Voicemail. I didn't need to open it. Cheryl's voice was already playing. "You overreacted, again, but it's done now. You got your moment. Hope it was worth it. Delete, no pause, no replay." I moved to the cabinet, the one above the stove, pulled out the linen I'd folded and kept. The old tablecloth, the one with the leaf embroidery, the one they'd spilled on and laughed about. It was clean now, pressed, mine. I laid it over the breakfast table. Jonas walked in and sat down, still rubbing sleep from his face. "What's that?" he asked. "First thing I ever bought for a home," I said. No one helped. No one had input. Just me. He nodded, chewing slowly, then said something I didn't expect. "You don't have to explain why it matters. I can feel it." I stared at him for a beat, then just smiled. That afternoon, a courier knocked at the door. No signature needed. I opened the box and pulled out a local magazine. Glossy cover, overly stylized title. The Anderson Estate, a celebration of strength. I laughed once, sharp, quick, and set it on the counter. Didn't even open it. It didn't have to name me. I knew what it didn't say. And that said enough. Later, just before the sky turned to amber, Barbara showed up. She stood at the screen door. I didn't open it. "They pulled the branding deal," she said. "Someone forwarded the presentation. Your name's all over it." "I didn't send anything," I replied. "I just stopped hiding the facts." She looked down at her hands, then up. "You win. Congrats." "There was never a competition," I said. "Just theft and truth." She looked older, more tired than I'd ever seen her. "You made me look like a fraud." "I didn't make you anything," I said. I just let people see. She left without asking to come in. That night, Jonas and I sat on the back deck, watching the water. Sometimes winning doesn't feel like a victory, I told him. It just feels quiet. Is that bad? He asked. No, I said. Quiet is how healing starts. We didn't talk much after that. The wind came soft. It tugged the tablecloth just a little, enough to make it move. Then came the last notification, a family group invite. No message, just an invite. I declined, no explanation, no follow-up. I opened my laptop. A blank document, no headers, no recycled names. The title at the top read, "The House of My Name." I didn't need anyone to say it anymore. I already knew it was mine. Some stories don't end with applause. Some just end, with no one else talking over you.